This episode of the Leap Forward podcast is brought to you by Bridge LT, leaders in conversational learning and innovation. Through AI role plays, technical simulators, and comprehensive training programs, Bridge LT is revolutionizing the future of corporate and enterprise education.
Today on Leap Forward, we're joined by Chris Mason, CEO of Fazita, to discuss the future of mobility. Chris shares insights into how AI, machine learning, and electrification are transforming vehicle design, as well as the shift towards sustainable transportation. He also touches on the importance of collaboration between academia and industry, the evolving role of technologists, and the skills needed for the next generation of automotive professionals. Get ready for an exciting look at the innovations driving the mobility revolution. Let's dive in. I'm delighted to welcome to this Leap Forward podcast, Chris Mason. You are the CEO of Fazita. Tell me more about your role and what Fazita is all about.
Fazita is the international membership community for the people of technology within our wonderful industry, right? So we engage with the CTOs, technical directors, and their teams of all the big brands that you would think of, their legacy car companies, their suppliers, and increasingly new technology companies and mobility providers, and the organizations on the periphery of the technology of mobility. So energy companies, finance companies. We're really building a momentum around modernizing Fazita, which when I joined unbelievably nearly 10 years ago, was then a 64-year-old membership organization for the international automotive engineering community. So it's very mechanical, internal combustion kind of, driven dialogue. And over the last decade, we've taken the community on a journey of now really focusing on the technology of mobility. So over that time, the discussions around mechanical engineering and ICE, have reduced. They're still there. They're still very, very relevant, of course. But the big ramp up has been, the wonderful journey we're now on in and around the technology of mobility. And I'm a guy from the industry, right? I'm now 39 years in this industry. So for me, it's kid in the sweet shop time. I live with the guys that live 20 and 30 years in the future, right? So it's just a fabulous adventure every day.
It definitely sounds like one of the coolest jobs in the industry.
Well, someday.
Some days, absolutely. Now, before we get to that, let's just sort of have a little bit of a kind of how did you get to where you are today conversation. Give us a bit of a story to date.
Oh, man. In the mid-1980s, the world was a different place. And I wasn't particularly academic at school. We didn't really get on that well together. So I was out of there 4 weeks before my 16th birthday. And my parents have been wonderful in realizing, my gifts were elsewhere. And helped me to understand, I was good at fixing stuff. I like kind of mechanical cars and, things that worked. And so we got me a job at the local Man Edgerton's garage in Norwich, where I grew up. And I thought I'd done really well. I turned up on the first day, I'd got the bus down and all of that stuff. And I was one of 9 people that started that day, equally young and baffled by everything. And my first piece of fortune was when the person that was asked to look after us pointed at me and said, "You're in Jaguar." And off I went and completed a year in Jaguar. And at the end of that year, I was the only person out of the 9 people to be given a proper apprenticeship. And it was the first time I actually felt success, right? I'd never felt it at school because that was never kind of part of their plan, right? But all of a sudden I was successful. So that was great. I did my full apprenticeship there. I did a ton of training at the old Browns Lane Centre and had these wonderful men around me that taught me how to fix Jaguars, but how to be a person as well. It was wonderful. I look back on those days with such fond memories, and still in touch with some of those guys, right, who taught me, so much stuff. And that enabled me then to move through a career in my early days of being a technician. I then set up and ran my own small garage business in my 20s before closing that down and finding myself in London and taking a job with the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, right? They were looking for someone who could advise consumers who are having problems with new cars they've purchased. I can do that, I thought. And I walked up then the day of my interview to Forbes House in Halkin Street in Belgravia in London and thought, this looks like a place for me, right? And that was the beginning of 14 years then of what I do now, right? Being a servant to the industry. I was fortunate enough to be invested in by some wonderful people at the SMMT. I became part of the senior leadership team after a couple of years and then spent 14 years helping to run the place. I did a bunch of great stuff around safety, around consumer affairs, government and industry affairs. I set up from a blank sheet of paper what is now the Motor Ombudsman and achieved a kind of a status of being some kind of industry kind of person, which seems extraordinary to me to say still now. To the point that in 2014, I took a call from a recruiter, asked me whether I'd be interested in heading up the international Faceta organization, and the rest falls into place with what we spoke about at the beginning. So it's been an interesting journey so far, but we're not done yet, right? We've still got plenty of runway ahead of us, and I'm enjoying every moment of a privileged career.
It really is an incredible journey. Just think about sort of being 16 and starting, as one of 9 to where you are now, pretty much kind of at the pinnacle of any kind of role that you could imagine or hope to have. What you would tell your earlier version of yourself about that journey. We can come to that at some point. But I guess one of the things I'm already kind of picking up is that sort of all the way through your career, you've been given opportunities, organizations, individuals have invested in you. You've gone through apprenticeships and so forth. How important is that sort of, do you think?
The moment of today would be unachievable without the people I've had around me. And continues today. We had a Faceta team day yesterday, and I was talking to the guys then about the importance of mentors and coaching. It's the way I learn, right? I learn through seeing someone that inspires me, and then looking at what they do and how they do it. And these people then become your friends, right? Your colleagues first, I guess, and then through time they become peers, people that associate you with being just like them. And that's the bit where I think a lot of us guys pinch ourselves a little bit, because we have to hear people like you saying the things that you've just said to me, because simply I don't think about it. I think the people around me have enabled me to believe in me. And then it gets a little bit difficult to talk about, because there's I just don't have that kind of ego to be able to say, I think, well, I've done this because of X, Y, and Z. It's just an absolute intent of mine to not let anybody down around me, whether that's my peers or the people that have given me a job or the people I've recruited into roles or the people who are asking my advice. And then the one thing that I think is common of a lot of leaders I hear talk is an absolute fear of failure. I just cannot fail. I'm too stubborn, right? I just won't let it happen. And if something doesn't go right and something's gone a bit wrong, that's a learning opportunity, right? That's how we kind of keep this momentum going. So yeah, the people are really, really important. And as I said at the beginning, I can probably give you, 6 or 7 of my wise owls through that 40 years. I'm still connected with all of them today. and I meet up with some of the guys from Norwich that I fixed cars with all those years ago regularly, and talk about football and how bad at golf I am and all of that kind of stuff, right? It's about being, I'm just a friend to the people who are my friends. I don't think of myself as any different. If I did, I think I'd get shut down pretty quickly, right? And I think that's a really great thing to have.
I mean, you demonstrate humility, which is a wonderful leadership quality, and we'll get more into leadership, I think, as part of this conversation. I wanted to kind of go back to where we started, I suppose, in a sense, which is you talked about technology and the technology of mobility and how it's positively changing our world. How is it doing that?
In every way imaginable. If we look just at the headlines, the zero agenda of safety, of emissions, congestion, is the headline of all legacy car companies and their suppliers, and the first step into our industry for the disruptors, right, that are challenging those legacy companies. And we think about electrification and the challenges and opportunities of electrification, and then how the tentacles of that extend, and how the trickle down leads to policy creation and governments making choices that are good or bad or ugly, and then changed, and then that's different in another part of the world. We have to exist within that as the technologists. And my point to our community is we know that the technical people can create solutions to any challenge they're given, right? They will find a solution. Let's make sure they're given the right challenges to create solutions against that are good for planet and people. And we've been here before where technologists have been demanded to create technology against bad things, right? Against things that aren't good. And we need to keep away from that and allow the technology of mobility to address some of those big ticket items around how we care for our planet and people, how we move people and things more efficiently and effectively in a way that's kind to everything around it. And that's the basis of my vision for what we do at Faceta, right? We're member-led. We know these guys are facing some of the most, challenging technological times in our industry. But man, they're coming up with some solutions, right? And the solutions are just mind-blowing. From the first time I sat in an autonomous vehicle at one of the big brands, R&D centers that literally had a trailer, on the back of it full of computers. The first time I sat in an electric vehicle that had a trailer behind it full of batteries, right? To now everything being done in a box this size, or these most sophisticated of battery packs. And we know there's challenges about, raw materials and about end of life and about everything in between, but the advancement is undisputable and a force of good that we haven't seen in our industry for its entirety, right? And that's just amazing for me. Absolutely amazing, inspiring, mind-blowing. And the best thing about it is engineers are really humble people. And I just love that so much. I love being with those people. And, over the last 10 years, I've got used to them asking me what I think, which still blows my mind a bit, right? Because, then you see that play out in a collaboration, which is a really, really powerful thing to be able to be a part of. Our role is about network and knowledge in the pre-competitive space. So all of the technical people are working on same or similar stuff, right? Because everyone's being challenged with same or similar things. And what we know about the technical people is they really like being together and doing that kind of, geeky deep dive into really complex stuff, to the point where it's okay, we've got to take this back to base and put our badge on it. And now we don't want anything to do with anybody else. So we bring the communities and the peer groups together to enable them to share in a very strictly pre-competitive environment and generate thought leadership, right? So that's about creating technical papers, technical studies, white papers, thought leadership, engagement, opportunities. In the old days, there used to be everyone flying around the world to go to the FACITA World Congress that's run every 2 years since 1948. And now in post-COVID, we've created the new era, which sees us ask the community to travel less, but we're providing more engagement for more people within a member company than ever before. And that's really, really important to me because that's really efficient and really effective, right? So, of course, we still have to do a bit of travel, but purposefully we're pulling that back and doing this more, right? It's really easy for me to pull a peer group together, around our, battery technology expert group, right? We get guys from every corner of the world coming together to do their work, and it takes them an hour, and then they're back to the day job rather than a week and they've been missed by their employer. And so FACITA's role remains the same as it was back in 1948 or through the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, whatever. We're just applying a really modern take on that, which is a cost down, travel down, out of the office down. But actually through doing that, effectiveness and efficiency is way up, right? We've got more members with more people involved with FACITA than ever before. And after a really horrible time through COVID, we delivered our most successful year in our 74-year history last year, right? So it's about evolving with the industry around us. Just like I said 10 years ago, I said, I'll take the job, but we're not mechanical engineers looking at internal combustion, right? We're technologists looking at mobility. And again, now we're not a group of people getting on aeroplanes to get into a room to talk about stuff. We're a group of progressive thinkers, progressively evolving our organization to fit the requirements of the industry today to help them advance technology for the good of the planet and the people on the planet.
And obviously those physical events are really critical at key times. You've got to get that balance right. And I know you have another very big summit coming up, I believe, in November. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But tell me a little bit about how you're using technology itself to disseminate knowledge, share knowledge, and work as a community.
It's really easy, right? We just do this. It's really, really, really easy, right? And I always say, like, I'm just a simple Norfolk boy, right? If I'm going to be coming up with what you think is some kind of extraordinary vision, you got the wrong picture. We keep it simple, and then everyone understands it. You got to understand as well, in the FACITA community, we've got time barriers, we've got language barriers, we've got cultural barriers. We're trying to bring all of these people together to add value to them. So technology for us really is, as you say, Justin, it's about we've got to get the right balance together, because the technical people really do need to be together, right? And if I can just make this point about pre-COVID, through COVID, and then post-COVID. Pre-COVID, I think there's a lot of emphasis put on we have to be at an event, we have to, exhibit at an event. Many of our people have to be at an event because we need that brand kind of status. And then through COVID, a lot of people got challenged, right? Well, 2 years has gone by. The bean counters are saying not much difference here, right? And then some organizations, have pulled back. We see it with the big auto shows, for example. There's a real pressure on those these days. But what we see in the technical community is actually a valid reason for being together. Technical people need to be with technical people to bring advancement back to base and then move stuff forward. So we still need to have those in-person events. What we said in FACITA is we just need less of them. So when we do them, we make them really important, and then people come to it, and then they take away the knowledge from that, and that's good for the next kind of phase. So the technology now comes in where we talk about a blended engagement. You remember when COVID impacted, there was like in-person, digital, or hybrid events. Hybrid events are no good for anybody, right? Because if you're trying to run an in-person element, then nobody comes, right? And if it's just hybrid, then it's not as impactful for the technical people because they haven't had the engagement with their peers and those drinks over a beer or a cup of coffee that lead to, to something more. But what it does bring, the digital thing brings us, if you take a 3-day in-person event, we now turn that into a 365-day community that happens to have 3 days of in-person engagement within it. So it's a blended engagement. And this is where the innovation has come and worked really well in the Faceta community, because now the benefit we offer to our members is any of your people, any day of the year, can be engaged in something. Any of your people now, through COVID, when my team were kind of wondering what to do, we got them to digitalize every piece of technical content we had available to us. Now we've got 10,000 pieces of technical content available as an open access resource to any member employee. Like the Denso guys I was talking to half an hour ago, anyone with a Denso email address can come to proceeds.com and download our latest white paper for nothing, right? Because I think that's value. And I think that's how technology works for us. So it's just utilizing the online platforms and the online space in a way that plugs the gap and enables us to say, we don't have to go on as many aeroplanes and be away from core business for so long anymore. But we do need to recognize the right people need to meet for the right reasons at the right time. Within now what we have is a 2-year cadence between our Congress, right? So it kind of starts to come together as a blended thing rather than a really complex technical thing, because then everyone can step into it and use it really readily.
I love that.
Sorry, long answer to short questions.
It's a great answer, and I love that sort of continuous kind of cadence of community and the blend. I think it's a great way of phrasing it as well. You touched very briefly on the word success. Tell me about what those metrics are
for Faceta.
Yeah,
success is building and sustaining a relevant membership community, right? So the network is of real value to current members. So what we haven't done over the last 10 years is deployed a strategy that said, let's recruit as many members as we possibly can to get as wealthy as we possibly can. That's not what we're in it for. We're in it for high quality engagement, right? And so we still run, and now we're back into growth after COVID, pretty much a member recommendation policy, right? So if the guys at Denso, who I was talking to half an hour ago, say, there's these guys in our network we really think are going to be a valuable contributor, we say, okay, let's have a chat with them and bring them on board. So we're right now 64 corporate members. Over this phase, because of the growth and because of the identification of key areas of interest to our members in around the technology mobility, we're going to move that up to 100 members over the next period. But what's important for us, more than stacking as many members as we can, is what we do with those members when they're with us, because we want to keep them with us and they want to stay on board because they're part of kind of an exclusive club which delivers value back to them and their organization year on year. So the metrics are, we're a non-profit, so we have to be able to sensitively commercialize to sustain ourselves. We have to be able to make profit to put money into our portfolio for the rainy day fund for the next COVID, where we need to, see our organization through. But there's a third element of what we're doing with Faceta, which is we've established a Faceta Foundation, which means every year, once we're back into real profitability, sustainable profitability again, the organization will donate to the foundation. The foundation will award bursaries to those underprivileged or less privileged to step into an engineering career pathway that will benefit our community over the long term. So the whole thing has this really wonderful churn of, it's okay to grow and to monetize and commercialize in a non-profit, to look after ourselves and sustain our organization for when I'm gone, whichever route that may come through. But also we can do this wonderful thing of giving back and enabling an investment in the talent of the future, which I know is core interest of yours, right? So again, it's about this thinking outside of the box of what is a membership organization here to do? It's not just to get rich and sit on a ever, increasing investment portfolio. That's just self-interest, right? As long as we've got enough to sustain that, actually what we need to do is disperse funds and help our members to attract those engineers that they're perhaps not able to reach at the moment. We know this is a big, big problem, right? Workplace ready engineers, we know is a big problem for our community. We know in the retail sector, recruiting the guys like I was, right, we're second to hospitality in the UK in terms of the challenge of recruiting new people in. So if our organizations can actually help to make our industry a more attractive place, then that's a wonderful thing. Again, long answer to a short, but the whole piece kind of fits together when you understand the whole piece, right?
Completely agree. And let's just talk a little bit more about the next generation and being workplace ready. Tell me a little bit about what Faceta is doing above and beyond the foundation, which sounds like a fantastic and valuable part of that challenge. But what else are you doing? What else is the industry doing? What else do we need to be doing more to ensure that we're attracting, retaining, and growing the next generation and the leaders of tomorrow?
So what we're doing is working with academia much more closely. We have an academic advisory board at the moment with key universities, institutions around the world who over the long term can advise us, because there's this dynamic between academia and our part of the industry, which everybody I think feels needs to evolve a little bit quicker to keep up with the pace of change of technology, right? We're still teaching people in universities the same courses we were 20 years ago, right? And somehow that needs to evolve to be a bit more pacey to enable the guys that come out of those courses to be a little bit more workplace ready, right? And that's at the macro level, the big challenge and of course, big opportunity, right? Well, the universities we have, University of Bath, Chris Brace at the University of Bath is a wonderful guy, doing wonderful things down there with their new propulsion center and stuff. We have University of Michigan over in the States, Tsinghua University in China. We have Aachen University in Germany and Deakin in Australia. That's the advisory board. We've had that in place for a little while, but what we're doing probably into the first half of next year now. I'd hope to do this in the second half of this year, but we'll be rolling out an academic level of Faceta membership, right, where the universities, institutions can become members of Faceta, and then we can bring the universities, the corporate members, and we have this other section of membership, which is the backbone, the kind of the founding members of Faceta were national engineering societies, right? So the engineering societies of France, Italy, Poland, and Spain came together in 1948 and said, let's put a congress together so all of our guys can meet with your guys and start this kind of international knowledge share and thought leadership piece. So now we have 32 national engineering society members around the world. So we've got the three key elements for me. If we've got the engineering societies, corporate membership, and academia, we can really start to move this piece forward at the engineering level. At the national kind of retail level, that's a different discussion. And I have experience with that from my days with the SMMT, of course, and with the Institute of the Motor Industry. I'm delighted and proud to be a non-exec with the IMI. So I think this piece is sequential. I kind of put it here at the engineering level because that's where the technology evolves. But the the workplace of today in the retail sector is as important, right? And the same applies to that. It's about keeping a pace with the change of the technology, but at the retail level with consumerism, and with how the high street is changing, which affects how the traditional retail models change, how the technology will challenge the independent sector, is obviously as important in this discussion as my core interest right now, which is this engineering level.
And talking about the engineering level, and let's just go with the word technology as well, because I think that's a great sort of lesson I've already learned from this conversation. You talk about being second to the hospitality sector, but in a sense, you're also competing against some of the great technology companies in the world. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. Well, the hospitality thing is about the retail sector in the UK, right? That's the thing at the OEM or the supplier chain level is you're quite right. I think the perception of our industry over the last 20 years seen as challenged by tech, right? By the Silicon Valley kind of surge. And what I think happens next is, we know there's many more opportunities for much more diversity as well as the technology of mobility era evolves and moves forward. If you think about, broadly speaking, the last 100 years, it's been a male dominated kind of environment. I think the technology of mobility enables much more diversity within every area of our industry, because technology becomes less, again, to my point 10 years ago, less mechanical, less this kind of historical nearly thing now, to actually a much cleaner technology and a much more precise technology. I remember in my days when I moved from Jaguar to Toyota, the technology of Toyota in the early 1990s was unbelievable to me from the Jaguar stuff I'd learned on, right? It was this clean, crisp kind of progressive technology. And I think we can accelerate that a millionfold today, right? Because the technology of mobility is about so much more than, internal combustion propulsion and heavy duty mechanics. It's a much cleaner based technology than before. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. And in a sense, what you're doing, what the industry is doing, is it's almost bringing all of those incredible game-changing technologies from AI, big data to and really it's where the rubber is kind of literally hitting the road, right? It's as an industry, right, as you said, it's at an incredibly exciting, dynamic stage. How are we getting that message out to that next generation of school children around the world, students who have no even real kind of understanding as to kind of the opportunity and the potential in this sector?
Yeah, and this comes down to national strategies and governments and policies and all that kind of thing. I can tell you that I think today we see a different imagery to even 10 years ago that is being projected by the industry itself and the organisations that represent the industry here in the UK and around the world, right? It's a much cleaner, much more diverse kind of imagery that starts to change perceptions, right? And all I feel is there's no overnight solution that says, wow, all of a sudden automotive is going to attract those guys that automotive thought they'd lost to Silicon Valley. I just don't think it works that way. I think it's an evolution that starts to welcome different people who then talk positively about what they're doing, that opens a door for others to step into. So as the technology of mobility evolves and as that impacts the retailing and the service and repair and the engagement with consumers, and we demonstrate the change of potential career pathways that can that can generate. That's where we see a step change, I think. But I don't think we can say we're going to do a campaign. We're going to stop talking about automotive and start talking about mobility, and then we've done the job. I think the job will always need doing. I'm just pleased that I think we're starting to see strategies that lead to a difference from our industry organisations right now. But I still think there's more can be done. I think there's simplification of messages, there's collaboration around messages that can really help, and that's an ongoing dialogue for the different people who lead the industry in different parts of the world, right?
Talking about some of those skills that you need today to thrive, what are some of the new skills? And maybe there aren't new skills, maybe they are the same skills, but give me your perspective on the sorts of skills that you really feel that everyone in this industry really needs to have to drive towards that sort of positive change in our world.
I get asked this question all the time by students. Whenever we do, an event or an activity, we invite a number of students to join us. And then we have a Q&A with the students, and they always ask, what should I do? What is it that I should focus on? And I always turn that back round to them and ask them what interests them. And they start to tell me about what interests them, and I tell them there's a career at the end of that pathway, right? I don't necessarily know what that is right now, but what's really clear is there's advancements around propulsion, around the mobility system itself. We used to call them cars and vans and stuff, but they're becoming more these mobility systems that are propelled by different things. There's engineering careers in the circular economy, as which is just a springboard right now that everyone puts at the top of their list, and how those ecosystems are going to evolve. There's careers around intelligent safety, around smart mobility, around infrastructure, connectivity, and the list goes on and on, right? And that's opportunity right there. That's opportunity for people to step into who have different skill sets to what the industry used to ask for. And I think that's the thing that is being grappled with right now is how does an industry that's changing so very fast look to an academic system that perhaps needs to change quicker to say we can talk to these people and we can shape something that's a kind of a fast track from where they're at to what we're doing. And just the whole kind of machine learning. I prefer the term machine learning to AI in what we do, because it's more focused on what we're doing. Is a great example, right? I mean, probably some people with my expertise and the level that I'm able to deep dive into what actually goes on. I don't know what the career is. The young people will know better than me what the career is. So we need to give them opportunities to start to inform and tell us people who have been around a little bit longer what they are. But the horizon, the landscape is open, and that's the opportunity we've seen in Faceta, right? It was 10 years ago, very thin, very deep mechanical engineering, internal combustion, and now it's just, man, it's wide open, wide open, to the point where we're talking about membership. We talk about technology mobility, and people say, what does that mean? I can quite legitimately say, what do you think it means? Because I'm ready to learn, right? I want to know what is that. As you know, that's innovation, that's disruption, that's market advancement, and everything else. So you might ask someone who's closer to the needs of an organization delivering the technology and mobility right now, what are the skill set you are short on? And they may know better than me, because I kind of sit in a different, kind of slightly different kind of place in the kind of macro level to that right now. But I can tell you the answer is learn from the industry, help academia organize that to shift it through. But that's no short term fix, I'm afraid.
Not at all. Just wanting to get a little bit more into this, the mode of delivery of teaching, and how we think about teaching these young people and or upskilling existing people in the industry. The world's changed. The mode of delivery has changed. We've talked a lot already about sort of bridging that gap between industry and academia, which is great. But how do we actually kind of teach, in your experience, these new evolving skills?
I was in Barcelona 2 weeks ago with my colleagues out there, working on some stuff with them, and I was fortunate enough to meet with the dean of the University Polytechnic of Catalonia, and we were talking about this, and he introduced me to the concept of micro credentials, which is this new way of learning, which sounds fabulous to me, right? If I was that age now, I think learning would be a different thing, because it's literally, in my language, a pick and mix over a time frame that is more suited to you, rather than it's rigid and this is what you're going to do and this is where you will do it and how long it will take. It's not as kind of as clear cut as that, obviously, but I love this concept of academia moving with the evolution of us as a society, right? Internationally as a society. Stuff changed through COVID. We will never go back to how things worked before. And if things can take that kind of shape, I think that's a wonderful thing that appeals probably to the younger people of today, which is less trying to make them fit into the box of a shape that we made, still trying to get them to fit into that. I would say, okay, that box is kind of probably on its way. What shape does it have to take in the future? And then all these discussions about international, student programs and stuff start to become a different concept, because it doesn't matter so much where you are in the world or where you are as an individual. You're doing this thing, and I think that will form part of the construct of how learning evolves going forward. Again, at this really sort of high conceptual level, how that works now, I think is variable depending on where you go, even within any country, right? Let alone in any region of the world. It's variable. And that's the challenge of workplace readiness, is you turn up because you've got a degree and you can move your way through an interview and selection process, but actually when you get into the workplace, you can't put that into practice, then we've got a problem, right? And I think that's the immediate challenge that certainly we talk about within Faceta, is there a way of recognizing, if you're in the US, qualification that comes from somewhere in Europe or Asia or vice versa, that says, okay, that's in a bandwidth of acceptability. These people are largely going to be what we're looking for. And as soon as you open the lid on that challenge, you've got a real long-term discussion, let alone project. I don't think we actually get to the project of it. It's like a passport, isn't it? You kind of need, and there's various examples of this in different parts of the world, at local level, in different regions and stuff. But the world's a more global environment right now, and will continue to be, as we know. So how do we internationalize that? And there's a challenge and an opportunity for probably the next 2 or 3 decades, I should think.
Two fascinating insights there. I love this idea of being able to stack my qualifications, and I love the idea of being able to think of my qualifications as being some form of universal currency as well. I think they're two phenomenal sort of insights there. You mentioned the word future in that question I asked you there, and I know you've got your World Mobility Summit coming up, I believe, in November. Very, very exciting.
Yep.
Give us a bit of a snapshot and a flavour of kind of what we can kind of expect you to be talking about when it comes to what the future's looking like for the industry.
When we gather in Michigan in November, is our annual technical leadership event. So it's a small event. It's largely closed door. It's it's the opportunity for our corporate and National Engineering Society member leaders to come together as a peer group to consider what they choose to be the most pressing topic of this time. The topic and the agenda is decided upon by our current serving president and a small team of advisors they select. Our current serving president is a guy called Mike Anderson, who's VP with General Motors, looking after the battery and electrification and advanced propulsion systems for GM. And they settled on the title to EV or not to EV because we've had this whole kind of focus on electrification, and it's at a critical juncture right now. And that means different things to people in Europe, to people in Asia, and people in Americas, and different people in different nations within those regions, in fact, as well, right? It's as broad and tall as you want to slice it and dice it. And the wonderful thing about the summit is we take our time to put a program together. The one objective I'm given from the technical leaders for the summit from the technical leaders is we don't want a conference where we sit down and hear people talking about what we've already created or what we already know, right? This has got to push the thought boundaries out. And so we will hear in November in Michigan an update from the three regions that we tend to divide the world up into about progress towards electrification, challenges and opportunities from the Americas, from Asia, Pacific, and from Europe. We'll then have some thought leadership about, we take this kind of view, there's been a 20-year kind of adoption so far. So what will happen over the next 20 years and what will we be talking about in 20 years' time from some real thought leaders that we're pulling together. And then we have opportunities for our member leaders to dialogue around that stuff. So our CTO, CTO, Martin Cowell, will facilitate these discussions, and that will lead to work stream activities we bring away from the summit and put into the FACITA workspace for the next 2 years, right? So it's a trickle down opportunity where, for me selfishly, it's a retention tool, right? They all love coming together and they love putting the work stream together that their people will be working on within the FACITA community for the next phase. And broadly speaking, we'll publish some of that. We'll publish an output from the summit, and that will detail what the actions are. And then the actions become populated by the other members, experts, and then we'll publish papers from that. But some of that key stuff happens in Michigan, right? That's the value of bringing that network together. And the same as we do in Barcelona now every 2 years for the broader community, where the summit will be 200 people. When we meet in Barcelona for the whole FACITA community, that'll be 2,500 people for a whole week of technology, of mobility, fun and frolics, right? So, there's the broader opportunity, but everything fits within this cadence of the topics that we're settling on, which are the priorities of the technology of mobility, which fit in and around, as I said right at the top, largely the zero agenda of emissions, circular economy, of safety, of congestion, then of industry disruption, and then some more specific stuff about the advancement of propulsion systems, uniquely. And then the piece just keeps evolving, and we develop these expert groups, and they carry on their engagement online, and they'll share a bit in Barcelona, and they'll share a bit when the summit then gets delivered in 2026, which will be in Seoul in South Korea, because our next president is a guy called Chan-Hwan Kim, who's vice president with Hyundai, again, looking after propulsion systems and hydrogen electrification and all the rest of it. So really our cadence stretches out years in advance before we're even getting into the headspace of what the discussion is going to be. We know broadly what the topics will be, and then we hone and adjust that and fine tune it even as we get closer and closer.
What a phenomenally exciting role you have, and you're painting an incredible picture of it, I have to say, in this conversation. If you've got time, I've got probably 3 more questions for you, but I don't want to encroach too much, Chris.
No.
Thank you. Well, look, the first is, what and how has the role of the technologist evolved and changed in the mobility boardroom?
I think we see more, I talk about the technology of mobility. When we're with Faceta Leadership colleagues, we talk about the technology and strategy of mobility, because the one feeds the other, in my view, right? And we see more technologists taking leadership roles. Mary Barra at General Motors is, an example of just that. And that's true, through many of the world's leading brands, right? They don't view themselves as car makers or sales companies. They view themselves as technology providers. And that's a different concept to, win on Sunday, sell on Monday kind of attitude, where we're making stuff to sell to people. This whole concept is changing fast and forever, right? And technology is the driver of that. So, the whole piece around, shared and connected mobility is driven by what technology enables technologists to achieve, which then informs the strategies of the organizations as they look to work out how they evolve from being manufacturers of stuff to providers of services, largely, right? And I think that's the really interesting, I always come to the point, it's a challenge and an opportunity of our time, right? It's those that see the right pictures will move to opportunity. Those that don't, won't, and it's a challenge that won't be overcome. But the agility of our industry is something that always has fascinated me since I stepped foot into a Jaguar workshop all those years ago. Is, look what happened in a few short weeks when everybody had to go home because we were protecting people from a pandemic that we had no vaccination for. The world's our industry innovated and contributed to the cause of protecting people and getting advancement in managing the COVID thing, of course, but also worked out how to keep systems moving forward from home, which now leads into some of the smartest R&D systems you'll ever see, right? Because they're all virtual, right? So we don't have to crash as many cars as we used to make sure that they're safe, because we can simulate that. And a lot of that is to do with, the engineers were given a really tough challenge in Q1 2020, and by Q3 2020 they've come up with a ton of solutions. That is phenomenal. And so I think the boardroom changes are happening in a really fluid way. I mean, that's my knowledge, right? That's kind of, the things that I'm aware of through what I do is that's what's happening every day. And it's truly remarkable. I think where the business leaders of our industry are moving us to in a short space of time, and these twists and turns in the road, we take a couple of scrapes on the knees as we go around those corners and always learning about what happens. And it's a really remarkable time, I think.
And again, it just comes across in droves as you talk. And I'm going to ask you a difficult one, potentially a difficult one, which is, of all the things that we've talked about today, what is it that excites you most about the future?
Change, always change. I think I'm, where I will talk about myself a little bit is I think I'm fortunate where I can always see how something is moving, right? I just seem to have this thing that I see something and think, that's not going to be like that for very much longer. Something is evolving out of that thing. And that's the thing that excites me the most about about just life. Really, is just things are changing all the while, and change can be this terrific force for good, and an enabler. And the people who affect change are sometimes not seen as clearly as they should be as the people are delivering that force of good. They're seen as the people that are sustaining planetary problems that actually they weren't responsible for in the first place. And actually, neither were their predecessors. They were advancing away from something as well. So change is the most interesting, exciting, energizing thought process for me every day. Every day, I come back to, I just had a chat with the guys at Denso earlier, and there's a couple of things that sparked my interest just from comments that were made that are just kind of wow moments for me. It's just like, oh, yeah, I get that. And I feel a sense of excitement around that, around, enabling people to understand that kind of, change, or you can move with it and adapt and be progressive. And that's why I really enjoy.
And if you were to be able to give one piece of advice to a young person entering this industry, what would it be?
Don't believe them. Just don't believe them. They're, just you. If you think you can, the only thing that stops you is you, right? Largely, and I really love, why I'm always really impressed by is innovators. People who just won't be told. And obviously there's a stubbornness that comes with that we all have to work on I guess. But just to probably sometimes not understand why you think or you believe, but just because you believe, then do that. Have a go at that. We say to our children, right, they're still their high school years, what are you interested in? Not what do you want to be, because I think that's just too difficult question, but what interests you, and we'll help you with that, right? We can invest in that, and then there's a career there somewhere. I don't know what it is, but that's why I say to all young people, what interests you, and go after that, pursue that until you can't anymore. But largely, I'll guarantee you'll find something, or it will be a stepping stone to something that will enable you to become who you are at the end of the day. So don't believe them. Just get on. Just get on.
Thank you, Chris. It's been fantastic.
It's been great fun. Thanks for asking me, and I hope something good comes from it.